August 14th, 2019, Los Angeles, California. It was 11:37 p.m. when Officer Paul Henderson received a dispatch call that would change his life, though he didn't know it yet. The radio crackled with static, then a dispatcher's voice cut through. Suspicious vagrant reported near Westwood Diner. Male, approximately 60s, loitering, possibly intoxicated. Officer Henderson sighed, annoyed. This was supposed to be an easy shift. Brentwood wasn't known for trouble, just wealthy folks, fancy cars, and the occasional noise complaint. But a call was a call. He turned his patrol car onto Wilshire Boulevard, headlights slicing through the thin layer of coastal fog settling over Los Angeles. When he arrived at the scene, the streets were eerily quiet. The diner was closed, its neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. Under the dim streetlight, Henderson spotted the man, hunched over, clutching something tightly in his hands. A battered shopping cart sat next to him, filled with odds and ends, crumpled cans, an old blanket, and a broken radio. The man's appearance was striking. His clothes were torn, layered against the evening chill. His beard was thick and unkempt, streaked with grey. His hands trembled slightly, though whether from the cold or something deeper, Henderson couldn't tell. Henderson approached with heavy steps, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark, landing directly on the man's face. "Hey, you can't be here! Move along!" Henderson barked, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. The man looked up slowly, his eyes glassy, yet intense. There was a depth to them, a story hidden behind years of hardship. But Henderson didn't care. To him, this was just another transient disrupting the peace. When the man didn't respond, Henderson grew impatient. "Did you hear me? I said move it. Or do I need to arrest you for trespassing?" Still no response, just that same piercing gaze. Frustrated, Henderson grabbed the man by the arm, yanking him up roughly. The man stumbled, dropping a crumpled photograph he'd been holding onto like a lifeline. It fluttered to the ground, landing face up on the cold pavement. Henderson didn't bother to look. He shoved the man against the patrol car, cuffing him with unnecessary force. "You just bought yourself a night in jail, old man," Henderson muttered. The homeless man winced, but said nothing. By 12:15 a.m. they arrived at the station. The man remained silent throughout the ride, his expression unreadable. Henderson processed him like any other arrest: fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings. Except there were no belongings, just the photograph. Rookie Officer Elena Martinez was on duty that night, sorting paperwork when Henderson tossed the evidence bag onto her desk. She glanced at it, then did a double take. Inside was an old, faded photo, creased from years of handling. It showed a younger version of the homeless man, arm around a boy who looked familiar. Too familiar. Martinez squinted, her heart skipping a beat. "No way," she whispered, pulling the bag closer. The boy in the photo had a wide, toothy grin and a distinctive eyebrow arch, the kind that made you do a double take. Martinez recognized that face. So did millions of people worldwide. It was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Martinez shot up from her chair, clutching the photo. "Henderson, come here, now!" Henderson groaned, annoyed by the rookie's urgency. But when he saw her face, pale, eyes wide with disbelief, he walked over. She shoved the photo in his face. "Do you even know who this is?" Henderson squinted, his annoyance fading into confusion. Then something else. Recognition. "It can't be. That's..." he stammered. Martinez nodded. "It's him, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. And that man you just arrested, he might be connected to him." Henderson looked back through the glass at the homeless man sitting quietly in the holding cell, his head bowed, hands clasped together as if in prayer. For the first time since his arrest, the homeless man spoke. His voice was low, raspy but steady. "I've been looking for him for 30 years, he whispered. His words sent a chill down Martinez's spine. Henderson blinked, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Who are you?" Henderson asked, stepping closer to the cell. The man slowly lifted his head, revealing eyes filled with both sorrow and determination. "My name doesn't matter," he replied softly. "But to Dwayne Johnson, I'm his father." The station grew quiet as the words sank in. Martinez felt her pulse quicken. Henderson's face went pale. Could it be true? Dwayne Johnson's father, homeless, arrested on the streets of LA? But as the hours ticked by, the mystery only deepened. Fingerprints revealed nothing. No criminal record, no ID, no missing persons report. Just a man with a photograph and a claim that seemed too outrageous to be real. Against protocol, Martinez made a bold decision. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she never thought she'd call. Dwayne Johnson's publicist. Ring, ring. "Hello, this is Samantha Green, representing Mr. Johnson. How can I help you?" Martinez took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I know this is going to sound insane, but we have a man in custody claiming to be Dwayne Johnson's father, and we think you need to see something." She sent the photo. Seconds later, Samantha Green called back, her voice trembling. "Where are you? Dwayne is on his way." By 3 a.m., the station was filled with an uneasy tension. Officers whispered, phones buzzed. Then a black SUV pulled up outside. Dwayne Johnson stepped out, his towering figure silhouetted against the streetlights. His face was unreadable, but his pace was quick, his eyes sharp with curiosity and fear. As he entered the station, his eyes locked with the man in the holding cell. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. The homeless man stood, his eyes filling with tears. "Dwayne?" he whispered. Johnson didn't respond, he just stared. And then, in a voice barely audible, he muttered, "Dad." The air was thick with silence as Dwayne Johnson stood just a few feet away from the man claiming to be his father. The bright fluorescent lights of the precinct flickered, casting long shadows on the cold linoleum floor. Officers paused their routines, sensing something extraordinary unfolding before their eyes. Dwayne took a hesitant step forward, his usually confident demeanor replaced with a mix of confusion, anger, and raw emotion. His eyes locked onto the frail figure behind the bars, the man's weathered face holding traces of a past Dwayne had buried deep within. "Is it really you?" Dwayne whispered, his voice hoarse. The homeless man nodded slowly, tears welling up. "I never stopped looking for you," the man replied softly, his voice trembling with decades of regret. The officers unlocked the cell and Dwayne motioned for privacy. They moved to an empty interrogation room, the door closing softly behind them. The room felt colder now, the hum of the air conditioning blending with the silent gap between them. "Why?" Dwayne finally asked, breaking the silence. "Why did you leave? Why disappear?" The man's hands trembled as he reached for the photograph Martinez had placed on the table. "I was young, scared. I made mistakes I couldn't undo," he began, his eyes filled with remorse. "I wasn't ready to be a father. I thought leaving was the best thing, but it was the worst mistake of my life." Dwayne clenched his jaw, his memories flooding back, the absence, the unanswered questions, the pain of growing up without a father. "You were gone, just gone," Dwayne whispered, his voice breaking. The man nodded, silent tears rolling down his face. I tried to find you. When I hit rock bottom, all I had left was this photo and the hope that one day I'd see you again. Minutes passed like hours. The weight of unspoken words filled the room. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the sincerity in the old man's voice, or the raw vulnerability etched into every wrinkle on his face. Dwayne reached out, his massive hand covering his father's fragile one. "You left, but you're here now," Dwayne said softly. "And maybe that's what matters." His father broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. Years of guilt, shame, and longing poured out in that small room. The following hours were a blur. Dwayne arranged for his father to be released, handling the paperwork himself. They left the precinct together, the early morning sun casting a golden hue over Los Angeles. In the car, there were moments of silence, punctuated by tentative questions and honest answers. His father spoke of lost jobs, bad choices, and a life spiraling out of control. Dwayne listened, not to judge, but to understand. They arrived at Dwayne's home, a stark contrast to the streets his father had called home. For the first time in decades, they shared a meal, not as strangers, but as father and son. Weeks passed, their bond grew stronger. Dwayne helped his father get medical care, therapy, and a fresh start. They talked about everything, the past, the pain, and the possibility of forgiveness. One evening, as they watched the sunset from Dwayne's backyard, his father turned to him. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Dwayne smiled, his eyes reflecting peace. "Maybe not, but everyone deserves a second chance." Months later, Dwayne shared their story publicly, not for sympathy, but to inspire others about the power of forgiveness and second chances. His father, once a nameless face on the streets, now had a name, a home, and most importantly, a son who had chosen to forgive.